Good afternoon, welcome to Meets Rod Shop. I'm Jason. Today I've got the small block 305 out of my 1979 C-10 Silverado pickup called Cream Puff. And when we were digging around on this engine, I found some evidence of a leaking freeze plug. So freeze plugs are exactly what they are. What it's made for is if the water freezes in the block, these freeze plugs are supposed to push out, that way you don't crack your block. But the one that's above the starter on the right hand rear part of the engine is, I don't know if it's got a pinhole or it's leaking, but you could see where there was some evidence of antifreeze leaking out of it. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna knock out all the freeze plugs on this block, change out the freeze plugs. I gotta change out my fuel pump. And then we're gonna go ahead and paint it as well, but I doubt that we'll paint it today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, you can see the evidence of the freeze plug here. It's rotten a little bit and you can see some seepage along here. So we're going ahead, we're going to change all the freeze plugs out on here. Remember, I know it's hard to see, but there are a couple of freeze plugs in the back of the block. We'll change those when we get the block off the whatchamacallit, off the stand. But we'll go ahead and we'll get these freeze plugs out of the way too. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so how I do it, I just take a standard cold punch chisel and a hammer. And I'll knock it like that. Then I get a pair of pliers and I grab it. Just like that. And you can see, you probably can't, but man, there's a bunch of gunk jammed in this thing. So this block's gonna have to be cleaned out. So before I put new freeze plugs in here, I'm gonna go ahead and get the hose out and spray this out again. So again, just take your hammer and your chisel and knock it straight into the block. If you do that, don't worry, and there you go. See that? You can see how rotten it was. See the hole in it? There you go. That's one problem. And if one of them's going, they're all getting ready to go. So that one wasn't too bad. Let's go ahead and get this bad boy rolled over. All right, once you've got your freeze plug out and you've re-cleaned your block, take a little bit of sandpaper and clean up the inside sealing surface of the port. I've seen guys use brake hones. I've seen machine shops actually machine them. If they're pretty beat up, you'd have to do that. This one, believe it or not, isn't too bad. So just a little bit of sandpaper will work. Go ahead and roll it back and get the other side again. Yeah, you see the crud coming out of that. That one's pretty nasty. Bunch of junk down in there. Spray that out. Man. Rust. Who knows what else. Well, we're going to go ahead and pause the video while I hose these things out. All right, the freeze plugs we're using today is a Pioneer. It's PE-100-B. This should be for pretty much all your small block Chevys, but they're brass plugs. That way you don't have to worry about them rotting out again. So just go ahead and cut out the ones you need. All right, so the main water jacket one's on the side of the block. It's 1 5/8 inches. So what I'll do is I take a little bit of the Right Stuff or RTV and just a thin coat around here, and then you knock them in with a socket and an extension. Like I said, I won't put a whole lot on here, but I just put a thin, real thin coat on there. Doesn't have to be a lot. Set it in place. Then you take a hammer socket with an extension and knock it down. The socket I'm using is 1 1/8 inches. Just knock it in. There you go, and you'll see you got a little bit of squeeze out from the RTV, and that's what you're looking for. Go ahead and do the rest. All right, next we're going to be changing the fuel pump. I've got the engine turned up on its side so we have easy access to the fuel pump. There's nothing wrong with this fuel pump. The truck ran fine, but I've got the engine out. We might as well put a new one in there anyway. So the one I'm using is a Delphi. It's MF0002 is the part number for it. It's 2 7/16 headed bolts. Just go ahead and back them out. All right, so there's the old one. It's out. The reason I always change these is there's a little rubber diaphragm in here. If that diaphragm goes out, it starts pumping fuel into your crankcase, mixing with the oil, and therefore you start wearing out engine parts. These things are cheap enough that it's worth changing while I got the engine out. All right, once you're ready to go on, go put the gasket on. I put a little bit of axle bearing grease or a little bit of grease on the end of the pump there. Slide it in there, make sure she mates up with the plunger. And then go ahead and start the bolts. Torque on this is good and snug. I'm not sure what the spec is, but I just make sure they're good and snug. I mean, they're tiny bolts, so you're not working down on them. But that's it. So the fuel pump's changed. All right, that's it from East Rod Shop. Thanks for checking it out today. Like I said, it's just a real quick video, changing some freeze plugs and a fuel pump on an engine that's out. Next video, I'll probably be going through the heads, putting valve seals on them, cleaning up the valves, and then throwing everything back together on this engine and getting ready to go back in the truck. But appreciate you checking out the channel. Have a good day. Remember, keep your head up and your stick on the ice.